Hello, welcome again to another edition of Curtis Jones Writing. If you're new to my site, I have written about 14 books, and I'm reading each chapter of every book on YouTube. So those who uh, haven't bought a book can still enjoy them. This is done as a free service. There's no subscription fees or anything to do this. I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you like the stories. If you do, I would like for you to share them with your friends and family. Get as many people involved as you can in watching these, because I've got about 40 hours of viewing time up on YouTube. Uh, this is my sixth book I've presented, fifth or sixth. Let's see. Dad's Old Truck 1, 2, uh, Imagination, Love Endures All Things 1, Love Endures All Things 2. This is my sixth book. This is Love Endures All Things 3. And I'm on chapter 2. Uh, if you get in a hurry for these stories that I tell, you can go to my webpage, which is curtis-jones-books.squarespace.com, and that you can find the link there that will take you to Amazon, where you can acquire either in paperback or in ebook any of the books that I've written. Some of them are coming in hardback now because I've had people ask for books they could give as a gift, and but I haven't got them all done yet. I'm not getting them posted as often as I was when I started because I'm in the middle of building a deck on the back of my house and or extending the deck I had back there, and so it's taken a lot of time to do that. Uh, it was I thought it'd be about 2 or 3 day job, but I forgot that I'm over 70 years old, so it slows me down a lot. But I'm trying to get as many posted as I can as I go along. I also have a connection on Facebook, which is Curtis Jones Author page on Facebook. It also has links that'll take you to Amazon. Both those sites uh, tell you a little bit about every book that I've written. So let's get started with chapter 2. If you remember last time, uh, we'd moved to the south. We'd been in Eufaula, Alabama for about 18 months. Uh, and a little while after they had run the airplanes into the Twin Towers, uh, the plant Stephanie worked at, which was owned by uh, wealthy people that were Muslim, and they sold their plant and went back home. But I don't know what. It may have had something to do with the fact that Muslims are the ones that ran into the tower. But I have no idea. Nobody said anything. But in management, which is what Stephanie was, when a plant is sold, the company that has bought it wants to bring in their own management people. And so they fire all the management that's in a plant. Anyway, what happened, Stephanie found a job in Farmerville. And this picks up where we continue our saga moving from Alabama to Louisiana. So let's get started. The move to the motel was very nice, and we uh, made the move in about 6 hours. Louisiana was very difficult or different from Eufaula. The folks had an accent that was kind of hard to understand. We knew that from the first time we traveled through Louisiana. That was not the only difference between the two places. Each state had its own character. Folks were proud to be from Louisiana and more proud of their Cajun heritage. They referred to themselves as coon asses. It's still hard for me to say that. This was a strange. This was strange to both Stephanie and I. Even in church, people call themselves coon ass. I thought it sounded like they were using foul language. Their mind had never thought of it in that way. It took some getting used to, I tell you. This motel had a coin operated laundry on the property. They also had a small gym. It was also in the middle of town near Interstate 20. There was a Chinese buffet restaurant that served crab legs for only a $2 extra charge. Stephanie and I probably abused the $2 charge. We enjoyed that place. Stephanie had to drive just over 20 miles to get to Farmerville, go to work, and come home. I know she was not happy with that drive. I got to work looking for a house right away. It still took more than 3 weeks to find a suitable house. I needed a place for the dogs and for the hot tub. I took the dogs to my mother's house until I found the house. We did find a suitable house soon enough. It took a few days until the moving company could deliver our stuff. When they did, they had lost all of the attachments for our Kirby vacuum cleaner and damaged several items of furniture. They were good about making things right. They sent repairmen to fix the furniture that could be fixed and sent a check for the lost items. The house we rented belonged to an older couple that lived next door to the house. They also went to church, the church that we attended. They were quite nice and both like we both liked them. They didn't seem strange at all. We had to buy a new refrigerator, and the furniture store belonged to another member of the church we attended. Everything we went to do just fell into place so easily on that move. We went and retrieved our dogs the first week we were there. It only took 6 hours to drive to my mother's house. The dogs were happy to be back with us. The female was mad at me for a couple of weeks, but she finally warmed up to me again. The house had a three-car carport. One stall was separated by lattice boards. That was perfect for the hot tub. It had a fenced backyard as well. The rooms were a little small, but not bad. I used the refrigerator I bought there for years to come and sold it with one of my houses in Oklahoma. The couple next door was in their 80s and didn't mind whatever we did in their house. They were both on their second marriage, having both been widowed. The folks at church said that I just looked like a preacher, and they asked me to be their preacher. I told them I was not a preacher, and I was not sure how to be a preacher. They told me they would help me in every way and supply a three-bedroom house with all the utilities and a salary of $1,000 a month. I was afraid I could not do the job, so I declined after being asked several times. They were using a minister from Monroe, Louisiana, that drove over 45 minutes to come preach. One of the things he preached on was the 3 days Christ spent in the heart of the earth. Another thing he preached on was the immediate change in our soul at the point of death. Both of these subjects interested me greatly. In fact, I've written books on them since. Now, let's go on. After about a month and a half, we had settled into Farmerville just fine. We were developing a nice little routine and had become comfortable with the new location. Looked, we liked everybody we knew after we became accustomed to the people in the deepest part of the deep south. That is the best way I can describe the state of Louisiana. And Lexi, that's okay. As we were becoming comfortable with living there, tragedy struck. My father died unexpectedly. He was in an extended care hospital in Fayetteville, Arkansas. He had Parkinson's and he had aspirated on his dinner, uh, fed to him through a tube connected to his stomach, and pneumonia had killed him. My father and I talked rarely because we were not on good terms. He had always thought of me as an illegitimate child. He did not think I was his son. He had also sexually molested my daughter when she was 3 years old. I respect him as God commands us because mom said I was his son, and I did look a lot like him too. Dad was 75 years old when he died. I had not seen him for almost a year before he passed. He had become very skinny, and his face was gaunt. I looked at him in the casket, and I didn't even know who he was. He had always been a heavy man, over 250 pounds, all that I remember of him. He was not very kind to me as a boy, but I still tried to make him love me without much success. When I was in high school, I had worked for a trucking company and washed the 18 wheelers that and their trailers as my job. I saved the money and I bought a 1953 Chevy sedan. It wasn't much of a car, but it only cost me $50. A friend I went to high school with wanted to run away from home. His father had grounded him for bringing a girl home when his father was gone for the night. I said I would go with him if he wanted me to. It is in a short story called 60 Hard Hours where I tell that story in Dad's Old Truck, Chapter 2. And also in a uh, book called, there we go, book called Dad's Old Truck 2, 60 Hard Hours is how long I was gone, thus the name of the story. We hitchhiked to near Kansas City, then to Lamar, Colorado, then down to Amarillo, Texas. We ended up in Tucumcari, New Mexico. We walked through freezing rain, stayed up for 2 days, learned to drink coffee, and we rode with people driving 100 miles an hour. We rode in the back of a pickup in freezing rain. We rode in a truck full of Mexicans drinking beer while they drove. We finally got to go to sleep in New Mexico after a driver slammed on his brakes and demanded we get out of his car after my friend had broken the heater housing. This was on the outskirts of Tucumcari. I was so relieved to be able to sleep finally. We got a motel, and it was the first time I was comfortable out of the whole 2 days we were on the run. We also had a meal that brought an inner peace. The police picked us up the next morning as we began to hitchhike again. We were taken to a juvenile detention center, and I was glad it seemed to be over. But my dad would not send bus fare to get me home. The police said I would have to stay there until I was 18 years old. I was just barely 16. My heart sank to its lowest place I had ever gone. My friend's dad sent me the fare so I could accompany his son. Dad had said to the police to keep me. He didn't want me back. Mom was very sad, but she stayed with Dad anyway. I was not sad when he passed away. I did, however, go to his funeral for my family's sake. When I confronted him about his abuse of his granddaughter, he said I was not his son, so she was not his granddaughter. I did not have much affection for him by that time. It was his jealousy over perceived guess of what Mom may have done. That is what brought him to the conclusion that I was not his son. He was unfaithful to my mother many times and told me about the affairs he had with other women. I could not bring myself to tell Mom what things he had told me. However, I looked very much like him. I only went to the service held in the funeral home. I did not go to see the place where they put his coffin on a caisson to carry him to the gravesite. Pardon me. It was a military burial with honor guard, and they buried him in a national military graveyard. I don't think any of my sisters knew how Dad treated me, except my sister just younger than me because he treated her the same way. Let me go on. Stephanie and I spent the night with my baby sister, whom I always stayed with when I was up there. We drove home and not didn't talk much. After all, what was to be said? Because Stephanie was just as hurt by the things Dad did to me and our daughter as was I. I didn't think Stephanie and I talked about him much after his passing. It still hurt my heart to think about how this man treated three of his children, including me, along with my sister Carrie and my sister Mary. Carrie's the one I stay with. Uh, when we got back to Farmerville, we tried to get back into our routine, but that was not me. Stephanie had been back to work only 3 days when the awful news was announced at her workplace. The company was sold to another company, and all people in management would be terminated within a month. Stephanie and I talked about what was to come next. We had no time to make plans and were caught off guard. We didn't sleep well until we came up with a course of action. We talked about preaching for the church there, but I told Stephanie I didn't think I could do it. We finally settled upon going back to Oklahoma after all. We owned two houses there, and we had sons that lived in each house. We also knew that God's plan for each of us may not be the same as our plan, and we believe that God knows best. We sided with God. We started packing everything to get ready to make the move. To move or to make the move less difficult, we also asked all three sons to come and help load and drive us their pickup so we could have space to put all things will have to be moved. Our landlords were okay with us not staying for the full lease. They tore up the lease so we could be free of the 1 year lease. We would move into the brick house in Muldrow where we lived before the trip to the Deep South started. We really liked the Deep South, but it looked like it was not to be. We talked to we talked in the night about how nice it was to have lived in the South for the better part of 2 years. We spent the next couple of weeks packing and boxing all of our stuff. That was the real job. It did, or I did it during the day, and when Stephanie got home, she worked at packing too. for a couple of hours every day. I hate to think how tired she would have be after working all day and coming home to work too. By the time the moving day arrived, we were ready for the move. The boys brought two pickups and trailers. I had a pickup and a 15-foot trailer myself. They left Oklahoma very early and got to Farmerville by 10 in the morning. The real work started after we made a hearty breakfast for everyone. The loading included all of the trailers and back of each pickup. We let Michelle lead us home, Muldrow, Oklahoma. I'm sorry, we let Mike lead us home to Muldrow, Oklahoma. He went a different way, and the trip to Oklahoma took a couple of hours longer than it should have. The way he drove, we ended up east of Little Rock, Arkansas, instead of coming out in Fort Smith, Arkansas. I know that Mike felt bad, but we didn't cry over spilt milk. We made it home before dark and unloaded the truck, and they left the trailers until the next day when we all worked on them. As we unloaded the trailers, we put everything in the house they belong, where they belong, in the rooms where they belong. We were less quick to unpack the boxes, and it turned out to be a good thing. I hope you've enjoyed this story. If you like it, hit the like button and share it with the friends and family you think might enjoy it as well. It's all these are true stories. They've got strange twists and turns if you go through them, but we lived them, we survived them, and I think it grew us a little bit. God bless you, keep you safe, and until the next time when I present another story, see what that's going to be. It's going to be Muldrow, Oklahoma, where we went back to live, and I hope you come back and hear that. I'll present that at the next presentation. Bye bye.